Hello everyone, I'm Force McFreelava, and this is Speedplay, Germany, and Hearts of Iron 4, number 11. We left off moving some forces over to Europe. We're going to fabricate claims on Luxembourg and on Switzerland, and by some forces I don't mean our massive amounts of garrisons, I mean one of our armored divisions or armored armies. We also go ahead and declare war on Nepal, where most of our forces are just kind of waiting. Apparently we can't move in from the Japanese. There we go, now we can, since it now joined the larger war against the Allies at large. We're going to go ahead and just flood into Nepal. We also are getting battle reports just from our navies, which I'm considering just sending out since we are bringing the air battle to the English Channel. And it seems as though it's something that we may be able to win. We also have to shuffle around our air forces a bit since it seems as though the enemy is trying to get advantages over us in a few places, but as soon as we put any fighters, it seems as though we take control over the skies. Now, I'm not entirely sure where the enemy is launching their air attacks from, how exactly they're even getting to eastern Germany. We've defeated them, but that's interesting. Now they're getting to northern France, despite the fact that they can't go through the English Channel. Who knows? Anyway, we declare war on Tibet now, and also on Bhutan, I believe. And we just send our forces over, first to Bhutan, and then over into Tibet. And we're just going to flow into their empty countryside, just kind of vaguely around their military. I really am not at all afraid that they'll be able to do anything to prevent this. For whatever reason, yeah, we're just invading them because they're not in the Axis and they're in Asia. Which is, as much of a reason as we need. I don't even think there are any resources we didn't even check. However, at this point, it's just one of those things where the Allies might eventually manage to get them on their side if we leave them alone. So best not to just leave that opportunity available to them. We're also now having to defend Western Germany, despite the fact that almost every approach to Western Germany is secure. Meanwhile, we are encircling the Tibetan capital, so they should fall pretty soon. And now we're also fighting in the Low Countries, so we're just putting our air force basically everywhere. There doesn't seem to be any sort of idea of intercepting planes in one aerial region before they get to another aerial region, which is a little frustrating. Also, Tibet manages to go ahead and surrender now, so we're just going to send all those armies over to Calais, where we will build up for an invasion of Britain. Meanwhile, the war against Sweden is still going on in the frozen wastelands of the far, far north, where we are making some very, very slow progress in just pretty brutal fighting. So we're going to fabricate claims on Denmark because we can just cross our armies from Denmark over into Sweden, and we're just going to do all that pretty much as soon as we can. That means first we're going to have to defeat Luxembourg, then Switzerland, then roll back on up and deal with Denmark. It looks as though we no longer have these issues with our rubber production since the Japanese and Siamese managed to take over a significant rubber producing area. So now our production queues are all going to be working at full efficiency. We go ahead and switch over some of our basic fighter production to more advanced fighter production. Basically all of our short-range fighters we're going to stop producing since we need to worry more on long-range fighters, and we are also building naval bombers. We also go ahead and declare war on Luxembourg, which does not actually appear to have any troops, and we just go ahead and win. Maybe they did have troops, but being hit from all angles by a full armored army just immediately defeated them. I'm not entirely sure. We're also bogging down in Sweden, as has been the way for the last few episodes. And with that whole Luxembourg war done basically immediately, we are going to go ahead and go into Switzerland now, which we have basically surrounded and just kind of lazily set an attack order towards kind of the middle of their country. They don't appear to have any defenders from the Italian border, so we're just going to rove on up from that side. They are moving troops to try to intercept our forces, or interdict our forces, so we're going to just fight some almost certainly doomed battles to just delay them and prevent them from stopping us from attacking. And alright, we managed to get right next to their capital, so we're just going to charge headlong into that. If you'll notice from our research that we are starting to research capital ships and just ships like that, of that various sort. That's really the main direction we're taking with our research right now. It's not even 1943, so we can't even begin on things such as nuclear, which makes me believe that the war is going to probably be over before we could conceivably even research atomic weaponry. We're also managing to already take the Swiss capital, so we're attacking their secondary capital. which will hopefully end the war pretty quickly since we are winning that battle pretty handedly. So there we go. Hopefully by the end of the day, alright, they've gone ahead and capitulated. We'll move that army over. And alright, now we're trying to find our navy. We get all of our submarines. We're going to just try to get them vaguely over to the English Channel area, and we're going to try to use whatever navy we have, which is weirdly difficult for me to find out what kind of navy we have. But we're going to try to put it vaguely over in the port of Calais. Somehow we're getting navally struck, despite the fact that we have total air superiority. We do go ahead and try to set up a naval invasion of the British Isles. So that is pretty much where we're going to be for a while. I try to assign divisions to it, but it doesn't seem to let us. And we are still getting navally struck, despite the fact that we have had and continue to have naval superiority in the area. So that's a bit frustrating and just not really the most ideal thing. We're still bogged down in Sweden, which is rather upsetting. It even says we have air superiority over southern England now, and yet we're still getting port struck, which is a little upsetting and a bit confusing. So I'm just kind of dealing with that at this point. Besides all that, all the little planes flying around that you see just roving about on the map don't really give any useful information as to what's going on, except, okay, I guess there are planes flying. And we aren't getting any negative pop-ups on the right, except for that probably someone's invading us. Although, honestly, we're always getting invaded, so that doesn't help us too much, and it's usually something so meaningless that we don't even have to divert our attention. So, yeah, it's kind of confusing. We are just sort of hoping for the best at this point. I realize after a while, it looks as though we can only send 10 units at a time. So we do go ahead and just select 5 of our armored units, 5 of our motorized units, and those are going to be the forces that go over. Thinking that I found a little workaround, I go ahead and separate another group of 10 and move them over. However, it looks as though we're limited to a max of 10 units for any naval invasion at once. I'm not sure if it's in the same army, or if we could do 2 naval invasions from 2 different armies and then double the units that way. However, honestly, at this point, I'm more attached to having our 3 motorized/armored units than anything else. We also begin bombarding southern England, which will hopefully take care of them a bit. And it's somewhere around this point that I realize that we're going to have to wait 70 days for that to actually plan enough that we can invade them. So we're basically just kind of stuck where we're at right now. We also have a whole bunch of submarines, which we did manage to move over into the English Channel area. Hopefully they're doing decently well. Honestly, I have no real idea how the naval war is going. However, yeah, it says we have air superiority, and I'm going to roll with that, and it isn't saying that our naval invasion is impossible. So I'm going to just assume that it's going to work, despite the fact that I really am not knowledgeable whatsoever about it. Which is probably not really the most reassuring thing, but yeah, we're going to just play it by ear and hope for the best. Worst case, we only lose basically 1/6 of our most valuable units, which is not really the greatest thing, admittedly. Although I'm hopeful that it will work out. We also are using our free civilian factories to build up radar installations so that hopefully we'll have a better idea of what is actually going on. We're also building up Air Force locations. If this invasion actually works out, then it'll all be a moot point, since it won't really matter that we do that, since those will take longer to build than the amount of time it'll take for our naval invasion to go through. If, worst case though, we fail the invasion, then, well, we're going to need that infrastructure. We also do go ahead and declare war on Denmark now that enough of our forces have arrived that we can hopefully just sweep through their country and get a backdoor on Sweden. So we're just kind of gunning it up through the Danish countryside. They are in no way prepared for our attack, which is really the best way for an attack to go. And we're just plunging through their countryside, taking over their entire peninsula, and now rolling through their various islands. So that will be pretty nice. I think that we will have a pretty decent shot of this all. We're just going right on through, capturing all their territory, and now it's just going to be a matter of fighting for Copenhagen once we get just finally to there. Now, historically, they just ended up unloading transports filled with troops into the city, and the Danes surrendered fairly quickly, I believe. We didn't do any of that fancy stuff, and evidently it would have taken us around 70 days to prepare for a naval invasion anyway, which I'm not even sure if you could do while at peace. So who's really to say? It's an interesting thing, and yeah, at any rate, we go ahead and just start using our Air Force. We're going to try to, one, see what kind of statistics we have on them, which is somewhat interesting, although doesn't really provide the most information. And from there, we're going to, one, go bomb southern Sweden, or take air superiority over southern Sweden, just so that doesn't turn up as red anymore. We're also going to build some naval bases throughout northern Germany, and just in the Baltic. It looks as though we're actually getting navally invaded ourselves, which is interesting, and kind of worrying, but also kind of good. It means those forces aren't actually defending Britain. We are also attacking Copenhagen right now. But yeah, so it's a good and a bad. It means those forces aren't attacking, or aren't defending the British Isles right now. I'm not sure what happens if armies just cannot land in a naval invasion, if they just cease to exist, or what else would happen. We're also pulling some of our close air support over to help us against the Danish resistance in Copenhagen, which is weirdly pronounced. And so now we have air superiority there. It doesn't look like there were any fighters to worry about. Hopefully that will all pull itself together pretty soon, and we'll be able to roll into southern Sweden and just close that front, which has taken us... I would not be surprised if it's taken us longer to fight the Swedes than to fight the Soviet Union, which says quite a bit, but let's not get into that too terribly much. It looks as though our naval invasion has finally begun. We are winning the first area. We have landed the rest of our forces. Thankfully, we decided to put a decent amount of our troops. Really, I wasn't sure how many would go. We also are now getting 10 more groups over to reinforce, but a lot of our forces landed somewhere not defended whatsoever, which is pretty great news. It's allowing us to just spread out into the English countryside. We're just driving through, taking everything that we can. We do not have enough forces to defend the full front line, and it looks like they have tons of forces in the area in and around London, so they may try to break out, which would be very, very concerning. However, we're just driving in. We managed to encircle the London area. They are pushing out in order to retake their countryside, which is a little bit less than ideal. We get the rest of those units, and we're going to try to drop them off across the channel. One of our units is now cut off from the rest. We are just driving forward into their countryside wherever we can. It looks as though we're doing decently well. We can hopefully even get back to that one unit caught behind enemy lines. It looks as though our army is just really just outperforming the English. We've even taken the area around London, even London itself. Now we are just driving through the suburbs and various areas. We are winning a defensive battle, pressing forward pretty much everywhere else. Some of our units aren't doing too great, but we have so many extras now that we've landed the rest of the half of our army. We can hopefully take these British Isles in just a few more minutes, probably in-game, maybe a month at most. We're just driving through their countryside, taking over whatever areas we can. We've got these forces all more or less encircled, and we're winning a decent number of these battles. So long as we're pressing them back, we are in a good spot, no matter what situation is going on around them. Alright, so with that all said and done, we are moving into just take the last victory point in Wales. From here, we're probably going to just send those units really anywhere else. We're starting to readjust our air forces, focus more on naval bombers, since we're going to have to win an air war in the Atlantic pretty soon, as we're moving on to focus more about the fight against the United States, which is inevitably going to be the next big fight for us. We're defeating the forces in Plymouth and finishing off that last pocket over in southwestern England, or southeastern England, which we've managed to finish. And alright, now all these forces were more or less just going to move into a few groups. Main group is going to just roll on over to northern England, other forces over to places like Cornwall, and we're just going to gun it as far as we can, as quickly as we can. We moved even beyond the realm of our air support, so we moved some air forces up. We're now charging in just with all of our forces. English resistance appeared to have been just a moot point. They do not seem to be capable of anything like consistent resistance. Now, this was something I was terribly worried about, simply because if we had messed this up, we would have lost quite a few of our best units. Not so many that we couldn't try again, but it would have been a terrible setback. The way that it actually went through, though, is just very great for us, and honestly, kind of has me not so worried about the invasion of the United States that is inevitably going to have to follow. We're probably not going to just invade the United States directly. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to go yet, since I haven't really planned that far ahead. The main thing was that we successfully invaded the British Isles, and the British Empire just capitulated. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. The war will continue when we come back tomorrow.